Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm an alcoholic. More specifically, I'm Bob Reese, and I'm a professor of psychology, and I've been in recovery since 1991. I'm also on the research team of the International Quit and Recovery Registry. It's better known as the IQRR. You can see my recovery story near the bottom of the homepage of the IQRR website at quitandrecovery.org or on my personal website, drbobreese.com. My research interests are focused on the positive psychology elements of recovery. In other words, how to help others thrive in recovery. With that in mind, I've recreated some recovery tools videos that have been modified from the topics that I teach in my online psychology courses and that I have outlined in my. To get us thinking about forgiveness, I've put up a series of quotes. Now, there are literally thousands of quotes about forgiveness. Everybody has an idea about it or said something about it. Some of them you know by heart. But for me, these all have part of the message I want to try to get across to you. Okay? The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. The next one is very important. The stupid neither forgive nor forget. The naive forget and forget. And the wise forgive but do not forget. So keep that one in mind. The quote by Lewis Smedes, I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to let you read it. But take it in. And then the rest of them as you go down the line. The Les Brown quote is very important for those of us in recovery. Okay, you've got to be able to do that. And then take in what Oprah had to say. You can't change the past, no matter how sorry you are or sorry somebody else is. The past does not change. There are a lot of definitions for forgiveness. Again, hundreds. Forgive, generally by the dictionary, is to grant pardon for remission of an offense, a debt, etc. To absolve somebody from doing something that was wrong. To grant pardon, to excuse a fault or offense. Um, it's also to cease to feel resentment against someone's enemies or people that you hate. Uh, the forgiveness is the act of forgiving. Uh, but the definition that I like comes from positive psychology. And I think it works best for those of us in recovery because it allows us to go ahead and live our best life. And says forgiveness is a freeing from a negative attachment to the source of the transgression. Okay, we'll go into that a little deeper, but this allows the target of forgiveness to be oneself or another person or a situation that's viewed out of one's control. So I like the fact that you free yourself from a negative attachment to the source, and that can be yourself. You can forgive yourself. We're going to talk about forgiveness of others, but one of the hardest people to forgive is yourself. I like Oprah's concept of forgiveness. She says you have to accept the fact that the past can't change. And then you've got to go on and live your best life, regardless of what anybody has done or said. So as we move along, let's talk about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not condoning an action. It doesn't require reconciliation. You do not have to kiss and make up to forgive. It's not about giving in, excusing, or forgetting about something. And it's certainly not a way to feel morally superior. Okay, let's look at forgiveness, looking at some tangible things that might need forgiving. So, can you forgive the transgressor or guilty party or parties of something that doesn't directly impact you, like, say, 9/11? How about Derek Chauvin murdering George Floyd, just kneeling on his neck until he dies? Can you forgive him? What about something closer to home, like domestic violence? That includes spousal, child, elder abuse. Can you forgive that? What about rape? That includes date rape. Rape is rape. How about something non-violent? How about infidelity? Can you forgive a cheating spouse? What about if he's cheating with your best friend? What about driving under the influence, wrecking the car, or worse, maiming or killing somebody? What about just being totally irresponsible as a parent or maybe as an employee? And what about stealing, like stealing from your family or friends for drugs? Can you forgive the transgressors or the perpetrators of these scenarios? What if you were the transgressor? Can you be forgiven? Can you forgive yourself in recovery? This is what we want to discuss and explore, and why you need to forgive and how you can do it. So there are three main areas that these objectives that we'll be looking at. The first is making amends versus being forgiven. The second is forgiving others. We need to learn how to forgive others so we can learn how to forgive ourselves, which is the third area. If you look at this, we're looking at a complete and unconditional acceptance for the transgressor to be who they am, to follow their own path. By the same token, I have an unconditional acceptance of me, and I too can go my own way. If you look at it this way, then nothing is owed to anyone. They don't owe you, you don't owe them. So the way I put it succinctly is, God bless you, have a happy life, go and have a happy life, and just stay out of my life. We live in a culture of forgiveness. If you go on Google and type in forgiveness songs, you'll get almost 20 million hits. The media, of course, is obsessed with who's forgiving who or who is not forgiving who. Men apparently need it much more often than women in our society. There's a florist shop, George's Florist, down from the college, which has a sign out says get wife insurance here 24 hours a day. They have a vending machine apparently where you can get roses 24 hours a day for forgiveness. So there's a whole industry out there to help you with your apologies. Most of the cards involve some kind of cute little animal or a cartoon. So why should we forgive? You have to ask yourself, who's going to be more hurt by unforgiveness? And the reality is it's the victim. Okay, the person who has been transgressed against is going to be hurt more by not forgiving than the person who transgressed them. It's like if you get cut off as you're driving into school and you're going to road rage, and you come in and you're complaining to everybody for half a day about how this idiot cut you off, and that idiot drives on to his job, doesn't even know that he did it to you, could care less. So you see how it affects the victim more than the transgressor. Continuing with the psychological aspect, we look at it, forgiveness requires that sense of self. You've got to know who you am. And that sense of self is often damaged due to the problems requiring forgiveness. If one learns to forgive, you can build up the sense of self, build up your self-image, your self-worth, your self-esteem, and you can become stronger. And all of that requires you know who you am. You want to be able to give up the negative emotions that are at the core of forgiveness. So how do we examine the conscience? We got to look closely at the nature of what we did. We need to know the difference between rumination and processing. Rumination is going over and over what happened, reliving the event, and feeling the negative emotions. It makes you feel more angry, more resentful, whatever. If you let's say you're in a breakup, a relationship breakup, you keep going over what the person did, and you keep building to where you go from being upset with them to hating them, despising them, and so forth. Now, processing is reviewing what you did or what happened, and with a different attitude. There's a series of stages of change, and until eventually the emotional charge is released. It's not there anymore. You've let go of it, like the picture on this slide with the chain. You break free from that, and that's when you can say that whatever the transgression was has been processed. Okay, so part of it is hitting the replay button, but you don't want to get into the negative emotions of it. You want to review it and observe what happens so you can learn from it and essentially get over it. To forgive something or someone, you have to have both compassion and empathy. And the two are tied together. It's hard to have compassion without empathy. It's hard to have empathy without compassion. Compassion is looking outside yourself and thinking about others as we care for them. Empathy is recognizing and basically feeling the emotions of others. Children are fantastic with empathy. They understand when someone is hurting. If somebody falls down, scrapes their knee, the kids are playing with, that hurts them because they've had it done before. They know how it feels, and they can just tap into that feeling. The other thing is separating sympathy from it. Sympathy and empathy are very close, but they're not the same. Empathy comes from inside you. Sympathy is outside. Empathy, as the little saying goes, is walking a mile in somebody else's moccasins. Sympathy is being sorry that their feet hurt. What is a real apology? Real apology has three parts. Say, I'm sorry, it's my fault, and then what can I do to make it right? Most people forget that third part. Okay? Now, languaging. People can deceive with their language, conceal, misdirect, create a verbal equivalent to an optical illusion. And that results in what I call a non-apology apology. There's a couple of books out on that, and then there's a link down at the bottom if you want to explore 6 apologies that are not apologies. But none of those apologies have part 3 in them, and most of them don't even have part 2 in them in a non-apology apology. The most common one that I see is, I'm sorry if I've offended anyone. I'm sorry if what I did offended you. And then what's left unsaid is, it's your fault that it offended you. I'm not sorry for what I did. Does that make sense? So be careful of that.
Today I want to speak to people who screw up, and about how our apologies usually suck. When you're wronged, what you want is very simple. While many will want vengeance or humiliation on the part of the person who wronged them, and I get that, most of us just want one thing: remorse and understanding. Two things. But that remorse has to be actual remorse. So when that remorse comes in the form of a bullshit apology, that doesn't really help anybody. I believe in a forgiving world, believe it or not. I am a forgiving person, I think. As angry as I appear to be in a lot of these videos, a lot of that is for dramatic and comedic effect. I have forgiven people who have stolen from me. I've forgiven people who've lied to me. I've forgiven people who have hurt me, then lied to my face about it. Why? Why not? Nobody wants to be in trouble. Nobody wants to have screwed up or done the wrong thing. But every single one of us can, has, and will again screw up. And it's only decent to forgive. But there's a big if on that principle. I forgive only when I think the people are actually sorry. And this is where the non-apology comes in. The examples I gave were personal. Let's go full business. Let's go full public relations apology. The fake public bullshit apology. Now, we've seen this time and time again. And let me know if this particular bit of public relations jargon sounds familiar to you. In my heart of hearts, I'm not racist, sexist, homophobic, or whatever, and I apologize if anybody was offended. Let's start at the beginning. Nobody in our personal or professional life cares what we think we are. Including that information in your apology, especially at the start, is a very nice way of saying, I'm a good person, therefore everything I did was actually okay. And even if we don't feel that as the person apologizing, this is what other people feel as the apologizee. They, the people receiving the apology, do not care if we think we're a good person or not. Next, the I'm not. The I'm not takes many forms. I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not homophobic, it goes on from there. This could just as easily be a fight about forgetting to do the dishes. So let's go with that. I'm not lazy, I just didn't want to do the dishes today. Great, but they, the hypothetical person on the other end of this apology, super needed us to do the dishes today, and they get to be mad about the fact that we didn't, because we were supposed to do the dishes. Nobody cares if we believe we are a dishes doer. Because we didn't do the dishes. You understand? The dishes are not done. But now, the real offender, the creme de la creme of asshole things to say during an apology, I'm sorry if you were offended. We, people who wronged another, do not get to apologize for how they feel. What everybody wants is for us to say, I'm sorry for the thing I did, here's why it was wrong, and here's why I know it was wrong, and here's what I will do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And it seems like that almost never happens. Instead, people apologize for how their actions made people feel. And this, my friends, is why the public relations non-apology is complete bullshit. Be sorry or don't. If you're not sorry, don't apologize. I would actually respect you more. That being said, if you aim to apologize, you have to mean it. Do it right. Apologize for what you did, not how what you did made somebody else feel. For Sofa Justice Warriors, I'm Joe. And the next time somebody gives you a bullshit apology, it would really help me out. Hopefully it would help you out if you showed them this video. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Using the word apology or apologize does not make something an apology. Planning to offer up an apology is not an apology. A real apology as an expression of remorse or regret, a wish that it didn't happen, a wish to make amends, and an acknowledgement that an offense has been committed. So when there's a real apology, there's a transfer of power, a transfer of control from the transgressor to the transgressed. You're giving over to the person that you offended the power. You're taking responsibility for your actions. I did it. It's my fault. And the accountability. That's called fess up and fix it. I show a video of the Blue Angels flight team, when they have their debriefing after the flight, they get rid of rank. Nobody is involved with, nobody cares about what rank is. Everybody, if they made a mistake, they own up to it, they fess up, and then they assure their teammates that they're going to fix it. Because if they don't, it could result in a crash. So you have to have responsibility. That's the fess up. Okay, I did it. It's my fault. And then accountability. I'm going to fix it. It's not going to happen again. We talked about some definitions. The one that, from a positive psychology standpoint, that we want to look at is the giving up of the negative emotions. Okay, Tangji says forgiveness, giving up the negative emotions is the core of forgiveness. So we're looking at that cognitive affective transformation that happens after somebody does something to you. And then as the victim, you make a realistic assessment of what's been done and acknowledge the perpetrator's or the transgressor's responsibility. Then you can choose, as the victim of the transgression, you can choose to cancel the debt. Okay? So when you cancel the debt, you're getting rid of all the negative emotions that are related to the transgression. You overcome feelings of resentment, overcome feelings of anger for what happened, and you remove yourself from the victim role, okay? Because a victim has no power. Victims have no power. So we've all been victims at a time, but you can't stay there, and you've got to get out of that victim mentality. So is it necessary for the person to apologize to you for you to be able to forgive them? The answer is no. Once again, you don't want to put the power in somebody else's hands. That leaves you helpless. You want to make it a matter of your choice. You can forgive them without them apologizing to you. You don't need them at all to forgive them. So we've all heard the old saying, forgive and forget. It's usually being told to us by the person who has harmed us or transgressed us. Okay? They want you to forget about it. So keep in mind that forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about being able to remember without pain. Okay? You can forget what hurt you in the past, but never forget what it taught you. And understand that tolerating abuse, putting up with abuse of any kind, invites more abuse. So can you forgive without forgetting? And that we go back to rumination versus processing. Remember I said processing is looking at the situation again, going over and over it, but not tapping into the negative emotions. Okay, so this quote says, "Forgiveness is not forgetting an injustice is done. It's the understanding that allows us to set aside the emotional impact of that injustice pertaining to ourselves. When we no longer hold those emotions and have an understanding for the person, we have forgiven them." Okay, I'm going to repeat that. When we no longer hold those emotions and have an understanding for the person, we have forgiven them. Now think about that. Let it sink in. Okay? Sometimes people won't forgive you. So if you've committed the transgression, then other people may try to guilt you, to shame you, to hold you hostage because of what you did, and they keep you hanging on. Okay, the mother in this cartoon saying, I'm sorry you feel guilty about so many things, but then I get the pleasure of shaming you because you do. Um, so at times you just have to bite the bullet and move on, whether the people forgive you or not, as long as you made the attempt to essentially seek forgiveness. Okay, you need to make sure that you can overcome the guilt. You can't do that unless you're willing to forgive and or be forgiven. You need to know the difference between guilt and shame. So guilt is something that's put on you by somebody else. Shame is something you feel yourself. If you do something bad, then you feel ashamed. You may also feel guilty, but the guilt is placed on you from the outside. The shame comes from within. And sometimes you just have to move on. What about trust after somebody has transgressed you? You regain trust through empathy. Okay. After forgiveness, can you trust again? Yeah, but it has to be earned. Can you trust a child that has fibbed? Can you trust a teen that has lied? What about a spouse that has cheated? Adult who has sexually abused someone? Okay. So this is where one of the few things that I agree with Ronald Reagan on: trust but verify. You can always check and see what somebody's doing, see how they feel, see how they act, to trust them. If you have a spouse that's cheated on you, then you have to be able to check up on them. And you shouldn't be made to feel guilty for doing that. Trust is particularly difficult when dealing with folks in recovery. The longer you are in your addiction, the longer it will take others to trust you again. You know that if you've been in recovery for a while, you don't mind designated people asking you how you're doing with your recovery. I'm talking about your spouse, your significant other, your boss, your therapist or counselor, your sponsor, if you're in a 12-step program. This shouldn't be a third degree, but these people care and they have an investment in you. If you get defensive and tell them to mind your own business, a red flag will go up and they'll begin to watch you even closer because they know you're moving in the wrong direction. Just bottom line, you put yourself in this position, so you're going to have to make the best of it. Tell them it's going well. Tell them it's hard, but I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Be honest. And remember, you're the one trying to earn the trust. And this goes along with drug testing. Some of you may have to be drug tested on a regular basis. Yes, it's a pain in the ass, but again, people have an investment in you. You need to do it. So reframe it. Change your self-talk about it. It's a way to help you stay sober, to stay in recovery. It's a positive thing for you. And the longer you do it, the less you're going to have to do it. One of the next things we need to discuss is the difference between a virtue and an issue. We often stretch and stretch and stretch to accommodate all the garbage that's tossed at us on a daily, a weekly, yearly basis. And it's usually coming from a significant other. So let's talk about it in terms of relationship. It could also be happening at a job. But we often pride ourselves and think that it's a virtue to be able to put up with so much crap. You find this quite often in addictive situations where one of the partners is codependent. They have a martyr syndrome. They put up with so much, but it's not a virtue. Now, it may be necessary to stay in a relationship if there's violence involved, but we stretch and stretch to accommodate that junk. At a certain point, that bag is going to explode. And if it's with a partner, that could drive you back into your addiction, or If you're the one that's been putting up with the crap, then when it explodes, that could drive you back to your addiction. So you have to be aware of this. So we can't be talking about forgiveness without talking about revenge. Okay, we live in a culture that says if somebody does something wrong to you, they have to pay for it. Somebody has to pay. Okay, revenge is often described as being sweet. It's often described as a dish best served cold, which means that the emotion should be out of it. Um, if you can take the emotion out of it, the question is, why should you do it? One of the things that I've learned from a colleague of mine that was sat on a board, worked with women that were abused, is that not seeking revenge is forgiveness. Okay, so not seeking revenge is forgiveness. Is that enough? Yeah, I think so. And then, I go along with the idea that the best revenge is a life well lived. Okay, if you go on without the person, and whether they know it or not, and you don't allow them to affect you or infect you, that is revenge enough. So one thing we understand about forgiveness is it's essential to heal our psychic and our emotional wounds. Okay, and you need to be able to forgive so that you can move toward your self-actualizing tendencies. Those are the tendencies that allow you to be the best you can be. In positive psychology terminology, that's called thriving and flourishing. Okay, if you are being like Eeyore and you're into woundology or victim mentality, where you're always talking about how badly you've been transgressed or hurt or so forth, you cannot move forward. So one way to heal against transgressions and the transgressor is to hold a space. So, for example, if I've been transgressed against, even if the person does not apologize, even if they don't want to do anything to right the wrong that they've done, even if they want to continue to hate me or for whatever reason, I can still hold a space for their healing. Okay, I can hold a space in my heart and want to send them. I want them to be better. And to heal in the world and to be happy. That way I am not sending them negative energy from a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we discussed this a little bit when we were talking about compassion and empathy. I want to be able to let go, which we'll talk about in a moment, and allow them to heal and not pull myself down by feeling negative emotions toward them. Now, must we forgive? The author of this article, which is you can also access, says no, it's not necessary to forgive. And when you read the article, I think you'll probably agree with most of what she says. So just remember that not seeking revenge is forgiveness. Now, letting go, which is hard to do. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. Robin Williams has this quote, sometimes you have to give up on people, not because you don't care, but because they don't. He also said, I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that can make you feel all alone. So if you can learn to take that regret, that guilt, that hurt, and let it go. And one way to do that is to give it form, is to let it go. Then you can hold a space in your heart for the healing, and that space may be for you too. You can forgive yourself. Learn how to let go, and you may have to let go of relationships if they continually hurt you, if they continually bring you down. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. Some relationships are toxic, They will absolutely kill you or kill your soul. So letting go, if you can give something form, you can let it go. So imagine if you're very angry or you hold a resentment against somebody, you think of it, put it into a ball in your hand. Imagine a ball in your hand. It can be a red ball to match your anger, and then you put it in there, and then you physically throw it away. Go through the motion of throwing it away. And that actual physical motion of throwing something away allows you to let it go. Another way to do that is to flush it. Take that emotion, throw it in the toilet, and flush it down. Actually, push the plunger, let it flush down. These two interventions or techniques can also be found in my book, Thriving in Recovery, and also on my website, drbobreese.com, and on my YouTube channel. There are plenty of them there. So if you want to explore further, please help yourself. Now, one of the hardest things that we face is self-forgiveness. Okay, it's much easier to forgive somebody else than it is ourselves. Nobody beats us up like we do. So you have to take responsibility for what you've done. You got to fess up. You got to take accountability. You got to fix it. You got to let go and move forward. Okay, and prevent those negative feelings from interfering with your positive living. Does that make sense? If not, think about it for a minute. Go back over this. You've got to be able to forgive yourself. You're a good person. So, how do you know if you've forgiven someone? Can you wish the person well, whether you're in their life or not? Can you hold a space for their healing? Can you let go? If you can do those things, then you have forgiven someone. Okay? So, what do we know? You can't change the past. Forgive, but don't forget. Tolerating abuse encourages more abuse. Forgiving helps create positive emotions. That works towards our build and broaden and build. Forgiveness is free, trust is earned. You want to cultivate empathy and compassion. You've got to learn to let go. You've got to find out who you am. And the best revenge is a life well lived. So, here's your forgiveness meditation. I am sorry for you, for all the negatives that you have experienced, and for how you are living your life as a result. Please forgive me for all that you hold against me, imagined or real. I forgive you for all you have done against me, real or imagined. Thank you for the love you have shown me and for the lessons I have learned during our relationship. I love you and I respect your humanity. I release you to your destiny. I pray for your healing. I hold a space in my heart and in my soul for your healing.